I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. Written by Paul Aster Cohen. Narrated by Nicky. Chapter 5. Nicky walked out of her room, ignoring the construction workers examining the damage next door. They all stopped to watch her walk by and began elbowing each other and grinning as she strutted to her car in her now signature pair of cutoffs and another midriff-bearing top, still barefoot. The dwarf followed, and the men froze in place.
"Good day, fellas,"
he said with a nod. Shecky walked out after him, nodding at them as well. The workers just stood and stared as a million scenarios played through their heads of what could have transpired the previous night involving a hot blonde, a dwarf, and a coyote. Nicky threw her duffel bag into the trunk of her beat-up 1992 Toyota Corolla and motioned for the dwarf and Shecky to get in. She slammed the trunk and tossed the workers a sly grin. As they pulled away, the workers hadn't taken their eyes off them, or closed their mouths. "Where are we going?" Nicky asked, adjusting her rearview mirror.
"Hopefully to get some nourishment,"
the dwarf said, pulling out a map from his dingy, worn corduroy pants as Shecky began wagging his tail.
"We are going to need our energy if we are to defeat them things."
Whoa, wait a sec, shorty. I'm not defeating anything or anyone. I'm just trying to get my dude back. Whatever you two do after is going to have nothing to do with me.
"Oh yeah, him too,"
the dwarf said, unfolding the large map with numerous red X's on it.
"But you are already involved. You killed one, you see. Soon enough they will come for you. If not this feeding season, then the next. You are marked, sweetie."
That was an accident. And so what, you and the dog are going to protect me? Or what?
Sure, hun,
he said, trying to find where they might have traveled to on the map.
"You have a car and money. We can protect you if need be."
Nicky wrung her hands around the steering wheel, annoyed as they headed into town. After finding a small diner with a drive-thru and ordering half the menu, the dwarf passed back the last of his french fries to Shecky, whose mug was smeared with ketchup.
"I know you're hungry, boy."
Nicky looked over at the plump man slouching in his seat, stuffed. The car grew silent. Only the passing road under the tires and occasional metallic clunk under the hood from the old car made any noise. Attempting to make small talk, Nicky tapped on the steering wheel and asked, "So, what's your name, anyway? With all this excitement, I guess we never properly introduced ourselves."
"I have no name,"
the dwarf said, settling into the seat, resting his eyes behind his eyelids. "You don't have a name?"
"None of the hunters do. When we swear the oath to defeat those things, we give up all earthly possessions, including names given to us by our earth mothers."
He pointed to the sky with closed eyes.
"Only the Lord above knows my name and trumpets it when I am needed."
Nicky looked over at him, waiting for the punchline, but it didn't arrive. Okay, she said, holding back a grin. "So what name did your Earth Mother give you?" she said sarcastically.
"Tully, with a Y."
She laughed. "Seriously? I mean, it's no Van Helsing."
"That guy is a schmuck,"
the dwarf spat, his brow furrowed above closed, angry eyes. "Sorry, guess that's a sore spot," the dwarf grumbled. "Anyway, hi Tully with a Y. Nice to finally meet you."
"I have no name."
"Sure, you don't." She focused her attention to the road. "Anyway, how did you get wrapped up in all of this? Were you for real when you said you were chosen? Did you hear a voice, or did something visit you in your sleep or something?"
"No, I said my name was chosen by the Lord above. I, just sort of signed up for this."
"Signed up? Like there was an ad on Craigslist or something?" The dwarf with no name's eyes crept open, and he looked over at her and muttered,
"Did you sign up too?"
Nicky rolled her eyes. "Geez, I was joking. You seriously started doing this because of an ad on Craigslist? Why would you do that? Who would do that?" He shuffled in his seat and crossed his arms.
"There are quite a few of us, actually. We have meetings once a month and even have our own website and chat room. Oh, and a Facebook page, too. It's all very organized."
"Earlier you said you couldn't get a hold of them."
"I can't. We don't have phones. Phones can be tracked.
So can Facebook posts. Anything online, really. If you meet once a month, what's from keeping those things showing up and murdering all of you guys? He grew quiet.
Anyway, there's trials and tests you must complete before you give the oath in front of the Master High Counselor.
Does he have a name?
It's Jerry. He's High Counsel, not a hunter, so yes, the dwarf said, looking out the window. He has a name.
And what kind of tests are there? Multiple choice? True or false?
Look, young lady, I will not be mocked by you. This is serious business, and if you don't believe me, then ask your boyfriend, or whatever's left of him when we find him.
Nicky shrunk down in her seat and sheepishly turned her attention to the road. You're right, Tully. I'm sorry.
I have no name.
Got it, but you're right. If it wasn't for you and Shecky back there, I'd have nothing. No one, and no help. I'm sorry for making fun. My bad. The dwarf crossed his stubby arms the best he could and nodded.
Good. Apology accepted. Now exit here and let's get some supplies.
Supplies? Like what?
You know, the basics. Rope, an axe or two, some stakes.
They turned and left the highway, making a U-turn under the overpass. Nicky slowed down and pulled into a Home Depot. But don't we need some garlic or holy water or some of those things? That shit works, right? The dwarf rolled his eyes.
Not everything from the movies was taken from the real story. No crosses or holy water. They're not like demons, you know. They're evil and basically dead, but not like possessed or anything. And garlic? Psh, seriously? No. You can either chop them up into little pieces or stake them in the heart. That's it, pretty much.
What about sunlight?
Well, yeah, that works, but it takes a while. Not very efficient, from what I heard.
From what you heard? Pretty much? Wait. Nicky stopped the car in the middle of the parking lot. Have you actually ever seen one of those damn things? The dwarf pointed to a parking space.
There's a good one right there.
You haven't, have you? How are we supposed to defeat these things if you've never faced them before? It's like the blind leading the blind over here, except I've killed one of those fuckers, and I've been doing this for 1 day. You little shit.
Hey, now.
Sorry, but you haven't even seen one, so I'm assuming you've never killed one either, fought one even. Here I was, trusting you with my life, with Derek's life, and you tell me you're just some guy that took a test and goes to meetings once a month. The dwarf sighed and closed his eyes. Nicky stopped talking, looked back at Shecky, then back at the dwarf, wondering what he was doing.
There's a good spot over there, he said, pointing with closed eyes.
Nicky pulled into the spot and put the car in park.
When I was born, I was a freak. Still am, I suppose. My parents were ashamed. I was in the delivery room with all the other babies, the normal babies, and they all got to go home one after another, but no one came for me. There I was, a wee babe, all alone in a hospital, this malformed thing. I was put in an orphanage near the hospital where they took all the other babies no one wanted. When I got a little older, I was adopted out to a nice family. The orphanage was hell, though. I was constantly getting picked on, beat up, and bullied, so a home was very much welcomed. My new parents were nice. They showed me what love was. I had my own room, a bike, everything a kid wanted. Except friends, of course. But my dad would take me fishing and play ball with me, so he was the closest thing I had to a best friend. Guess he was my best friend. When I was a teenager, he got killed in a car accident. My mom cried and cried for months, and I basically became invisible. Eventually, I had to start public school because she couldn't homeschool me no more. I get there walking by myself every day. Had a path and everything to avoid them mean kids. After school, I'd cook dinner for my mom and me, but she'd never talk or smile. She would just sit there. It was like living with a ghost. Then one day I came home from school and she was sitting on a couch in the dark in the living room like always. But something was different. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the air. I walked over and touched her shoulder and she was cold and lifeless. There was all these pills all over the table. I was afraid that if I called the cops and told them what happened, they'd send me back to that orphanage. School was hard enough, so I wasn't about to go back to that hellhole. So I ran away. But I couldn't bear the idea of my mother on that couch rotting away to nothing before eventually being discovered. So I called my grandma and I told her what had happened. The funny thing is,
A sad grin crawled across the dwarf's mouth.
she never asked me what I was going to do. Never asked if I needed help, a place to stay. That was the last time I spoke to anyone from the only family I ever knew.
Shecky whined from the back seat, and the dwarf reached back to give him a scratch behind his ear.
So there I was, out on the street, he continued,
his eyes still shut, but his brow relaxed.
A dwarf named Tully with a Y. No food, no money, no nothing. But before I left my house that day, I grabbed some paperwork from the adoption place that I heard my parents talking about one night. It was in a filing cabinet, so I grabbed it before I ran off. I decided I'd find my real parents and tell them I was okay. Showed them that I made it through all right and that I understood why they left me at the hospital when I was born. I wasn't mad anymore. I was just lonely. I found them a year later, got an address and everything. Then one night I showed up to their house. It was dark, but the door was wide open, and from somewhere inside I could hear some noises. Not like voices talking, but I don't know, something weird. I called out to them. Then everything got quiet. They had a pretty nice big house, so I crept inside and walked through, asking if they were all right. Then I saw something moving in the shadows. Maybe it was the shadows themselves. I turned the flashlight on from my phone and saw a monster. Big, scary. The thing was lurched over my mum, its mouth full of teeth and blood and bits of her hanging from its face. I turned to run and tripped over something. It was my dad in a couple of pieces, thrown all about. Sounds came from upstairs and more of them things showed up, crawling down the walls and across the ceiling, eyes glowing in the black with the color of death. I ran through the house and found a small enough vent that only I could fit through, so I dove inside and went as far as I could before I got stuck. Them things clawed at the walls for hours, but I guess I was stuck in a panic room ventilation shaft or something. They couldn't reach me no matter how hard they tried. They screeched and howled and cursed, all the while I just lay there, stuck in the vent, somewhere in the house. Eventually, I suppose the sun was about to rise, so they all left and it was quiet. I had no idea how long I had been in there. But I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck. I tried like hell to get myself free, but I couldn't. For what felt like days or something, I was stuck, the smell of my rotten folks seeping in through the vent openings. You see, my body was so dehydrated and I was so starved that eventually I lost some weight. Then I sneezed and felt my entire body slide a bit. I wiggled and slid some more. I shimmied back down the way I had entered and was eventually freed. I vowed over the corpses of my real parents that I would hunt down these things that did that to them and kill them. Kill all of them. Every last one. So yes, dear, I have seen them. I have heard them. I have smelled them. And now I hunt them.
Nicky stared at him, with tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know.
It's a sad story, but a true one. Those days and nights burn in my gut and are gasoline for my insides. It fuels the mission. That's why I'm alive. That's why we are here. That's what we need to do.
Nicky wiped her face. Let's do this. She stuck out her hand and the dwarf grinned and shook it.